Welcome to the SkullKing Football Podcast, presented by Fox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Hello again, and welcome to the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullrood, and on tonight's show, we are going to go over some news and notes, and to finish it off, we're going to go over the guys that the staff here at SkullKing, we are planting our flag. We are going to die on this player's mountain this year, the guys that we want on every team. And so it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode again tonight. We want to make sure that we are using our time wisely and making sure that we're not wasting yours. So why don't we go ahead and get started and get right into it. On the news and notes front, Coach Adam Gase said hopefully Kenyan Drake will handle 15 to 20 carries and see 6 to 8 targets per game. Basically, it looks like the Miami Dolphins are going to do everything they can to make Kenyan Drake their workhorse back. They do have Frank Gore there as well, but it looks like I said, it looks like they want Drake to be the guy. They did the same thing with Jay Ajayi last year, and Ajayi just couldn't seem to handle it, I guess. A lot of people said that last year he had some, not necessarily disciplinary issues. It was more of it was more effort. He didn't want to try. So maybe Drake is the guy this year. So he is one that I am, if he falls a little bit, I am willing to take him as a running back 2 if I draft wide receiver heavy. So he's a guy that I am looking at a little bit. We'll kind of see how this goes with him. So in minor news, the Packers traded quarterback Brent Hundley to the Seattle Seahawks for a 2019 6th round pick, I believe. And so this upgrades the Seattle Seahawks backup quarterback position and basically solidifies the fact that the Packers are going to have Deshaun Kaiser as their is the quarterback of the future, I guess you could say, to learn behind Aaron Rodgers. Another minor thing, the Seattle Seahawks signed wide receiver Tyler Lockett to a 3-year, $31.8 million extension through 2021. Now, part of the reason I mentioned this is one of the guys on staff here at SkullKing wondered, is that too much for a guy like Tyler Lockett? And my answer was yes and no. And here's the deal. If you look at another wide receiver from the Seahawks from last year who just got a big deal, about $10 million a year, was Paul Richardson, who is now with the Washington Redskins. I believe that Tyler Lockett is better. He is a little more valuable. What's been going on with Tyler Lockett, though, is when he actually got injured at the end of 2016 with a gruesome broken ankle. Never fully recovered throughout last season, was dealt with some other injuries a little bit just because he never was able to get his speed back, really. They think that he's finally got that back, and he's the guy that they want to put their stock in. And if you have a fantasy league that has return scoring, he is definitely a guy that I would want to look at, especially with how late he is going. I mean, he is going, basically at the end of drafts. Doug Baldwin, we talked about this last night. Doug Baldwin said that his knee is about 80 to 85% and probably won't be 100% the entire season. So that could be a reason to kind of look at Tyler Lockett as a late round flyer, one of the last couple of picks in your draft before defense and kicker. So that's a thought for you. The big news, obviously, for today was that Aaron Rodgers got his new deal. He deserves the big time paycheck, the historic paycheck, $176 million to $180 $80 million. He will get $67 million before the end of the calendar year and over $80 million before St. Patrick's Day of next year. $103 million practically guaranteed per source. So big contract, Aaron Rodgers, well deserved. The Ringer's Mike Lombardi reiterated on his latest GM Street podcast that Randall Cobb is available for trade. Very interesting that he is up for trade with some of their wide receiver prospects that they've got. Really, the only guy that's really relevant right now is Devontae Adams. They have Ty Montgomery, but he's more of a pass-catching running back now. So another minor thing, the Jets traded or maybe are, I don't know if it's been finalized yet, Teddy Bridgewater to the New Orleans Saints. It's a 1-year deal, so basically he's just going to be the backup to Breeze. We'll see if it sticks out longer, if he becomes kind of the guy that they're looking at to be the long-term answer. Devontae Booker has been named the starting running back for the Broncos. The thing to look at with Devontae Booker being announced as the starting running back is that Royce Freeman right now is going in like the third and fourth rounds of really the third round because of how well he is playing in the preseason for the Broncos. He's got 3 touchdowns so far in the preseason. And so with Devontae Booker being named the running back, it's kind of obvious that they're going to go running back by committee. We'll kind of see how that plays out. I think that by the end of the season, Royce Freeman could have it, but is anyone really willing to take a 3rd or 4th round pick on a guy who's going to be in a committee? That's not somewhere that I want to go with that. So if Royce Freeman's draft stock drops a little bit, he'd be worth it. But for right now, again, as long as they're saying that Devontae Booker is going to be the starting running back, I'm avoiding both of them. So, and that's all for the fantasy relevant news that we've got for tonight. So now what I want to look at, do our little transition here. What we want to look at is, again, these are the guys that the staff has kind of looked at, and each, I've got a couple different players for each guy. These are ones that we've decided this is the guy that we want this year. This is in all of our drafts, as many leagues as we play in. This is the guy that I want on as many of my teams as possible. For me last year, that was Kareem Hunt, and I didn't get him on any. I misjudged his value in a couple of drafts, and other ones he was just taken early. So I wasn't the only one on him, obviously. But this year, we've got some guys that you may agree with, you may not. So we're going to start it off. Fong, our running back correspondent, his 2 that he is really looking at that he wants on every single team. Number 1 is Derrick Henry. In his opinion, Derrick Henry is going to get a majority of those carries. He is Fong plays a lot in standard leagues, not so much in PPR, and so that's kind of how that's really what Derrick Henry is going to be the superior player in, is going to be standard. He's a goal line back, a big bruiser. Does not do a whole lot of receiving, so I can understand why Fong wants Derrick Henry on his teams. And again, Dion Lewis has had problems staying healthy in his career, so that can make things a little difficult for Lewis if he starts getting the injury bug, and could really make things a lot easier for them to use Derrick Henry. The other guy that Fong is really planting his flag in for this year is Gio Bernard. If you look at last year, not a huge season, 105 carries for 458 yards, 2 touchdowns. Receiving, he had 43 receptions for 389 yards and 2 touchdowns there. In one of my leagues, again, all leagues are a little bit different, but for me, the league that I play in with guys from work, Bernard ended up finishing, I want to say, the running back number 28. Solid as a kind of a running back 3. It helped that Mixon had some injuries, and so he got a little more playing time. Personally, I don't know if Bernard's going to get enough to be relevant fantasy-wise. I know that they really want to use Mixon a whole lot. There have been a couple experts and gurus out there calling Mixon Le'Veon Bell 2.0. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not necessarily believing that from seeing his tape from last year right now, but it is a possibility. So yeah, those were Fongs. For Justin, my podcast co-host, Jordan Howard is a guy that he is really looking at trying to draft in as many leagues as possible this year. According to I want to say it's either Fantasy Pros or Pro Football Focus. I think it's Fantasy Pros. According to Fantasy Pros, Jordan Howard has the easiest schedule against defenses for running backs this year, and so that could prove to be very advantageous for him. And we like Jordan Howard on this podcast. Howard last year finished as running back 14. Finished with over 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. He doesn't catch a whole lot. 23 for 125. No touchdowns receiving, but they've got Tariq Cohen for that. But Jordan Howard is going to be a solid runner. He's going to get you points, especially if you're playing in standard leagues. Our main thing here is PPR, so he is definitely going to be someone to watch that could have a big year this year. A couple other players that Justin is really into this year. Mike Williams, wide receiver for San Diego. Williams had some injury issues last year. He had a back injury, I believe, is what kept him out most of the season. Didn't get to play a whole lot. This year, you look at Mike Williams' size. He's like 6'3", 200 plus. The Chargers are down Hunter Henry, I believe, is a torn ACL, out for the season. You've got Antonio Gates that is no longer on the team. So I don't even know who the tight end option is for them right now. So if you're looking for a big body to target, especially in the red zone, which is what they had in Hunter Henry and Antonio Gates, Mike Williams is the next guy to go with there. I know that they've got Tyrell Williams there too, who has a little bit of size, but to me, he's more of a deep ball threat. And so Justin's really into Mike Williams for the year, which I can't fault him. He's also a major value in drafts right now. He's going pretty late, so he's a guy to keep an eye on. And Justin is also big on Doug Baldwin for this year. Again, we are Seahawks fans, but Doug Baldwin has finished in the top 10 in wide receivers for, was it the last 4 years or so? Here, let me actually pull up. In the league that I played in last year, Baldwin had a little bit of a down year, finished wide receiver 15. So, but overall last year was a down year for wide receivers in general. Moving on, Wyatt, our wide receiver correspondent, his guy that seems like he's really wanting to draft everywhere is Kyle Rudolph. He says that Kyle Rudolph is his favorite target in terms of tight ends this year. Rudolph this year has Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. Cousins had a great rapport with Jordan Reed, with Vernon Davis, and it didn't really matter which one of those guys was in the lineup. Usually it was Vernon Davis because Jordan Reed couldn't seem to be healthy. But when he was targeting his tight ends finished and played very well, finished with very good fantasy stats. So I can see why Wyatt likes Kyle Rudolph for this year. I can't fault him. I think that I've actually got Kyle Rudolph. Let me actually pull up my rankings. Let's pull up the tight ends. Where do I have Kyle? I have Kyle Rudolph as a tight end 8. So definitely a guy that I think can finish easily in the top 10 in production and is a solid guy to look at for this season. So I wasn't able to get any others, but we're gonna get into mine. So here we go. The guys that I'm planting my flag in for this year, and I've never really done it for this guy before, but I believe that the value is there to take him. And so for me, Andrew Luck is my quarterback that I may be planting the flag in and saying I am going to ride this one until it's done. If I die on this mountain, it's okay because I've had multiple years where I've had to stream quarterbacks anyways. So let's take a shot. Andrew Luck is coming off of the major injury, the shoulder surgery. Didn't play all last year. He's dealing with a little bit of a foot issue, but they said he's going to be fine. He'll be ready for next week. He's looked pretty darn good passing wise in the preseason so far. And so I am willing, because he in years past has been, when he's healthy, the quarterback 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there drafted. And this year, because of the injury, we're not necessarily totally sure about him. He's currently, I want to say, the quarterback 9 in the expert consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros, and the quarterback 10 according to ADP. I'm willing to take that. If he's going to be going that late, I'm more than happy to build up everything else and take Andrew Luck a little bit later, because we know what he's capable of. So the wide receiver for me that I am going to try to get on as many teams as possible is Chris Hogan. Now, I could have picked a guy up towards the top that I really, really want. I think that going it's constructive for me to pick one of the guys in the middle. A Chris Hogan guy who's going around a wide receiver. Let me pull it up. I have him ranked in my PPR rankings as wide receiver number 23. And it helped, again, part of the reason for that is he played really well in the beginning last year. You've got Julian Edelman, who is missing 4 games, I believe, because of suspension. You have multiple other wide receivers that have either retired or been released. There's some no-name guys that just, unless you're from New England and follow the Patriots really well, you don't even know who they are on the team this year. Danny Amendola is no longer with the team. He went to Miami. So really, it's in terms of real receiving options, it's Rob Gronkowski, Chris Hogan, and James White out of the backfield. If I'm going to get the number 1 wide receiver from the Patriots, from a guy like Tom Brady, who regularly finishes as a top 5 quarterback, even in a bad year, finishes as a 6, I am more than happy to take Chris Hogan at the value that he's at right now. So I think that, again, as long as he stays healthy, because he can play in the slot and he can play out wide, he provides the touchdown value as well. So he's the guy that I'm definitely looking at. Tight ends, I've got a few of them. I'm looking at Trey Burton. I think that he could be a solid value pick at tight end 9. Or or Trey Burton could be the Coby Fleener of this year from a couple years ago. So where that was just an absolute disaster these last couple of years for Coby Fleener. So he's one possibility. In terms of other tight ends, I'm really big, honestly, on waiting and just seeing if you go from the same team that Coby Fleener's on, Benjamin Watson, now that he's back with them, he could be a solid pickup. Even if you don't in a deeper league draft him, if not in a deeper league, keep an eye on him in the waiver wire. He could have a good season as well. The running back for me that I'm really planting on, I'm going the opposite of Fong. I am planting my flag and living or dying on the Dion Lewis mountain. Dion Lewis, I believe, led the NFL in rushing yards over the second half of the season last year. Was able to catch the ball out of the backfield, finished the year with 9 TDs total, I believe. Has the ability to catch the ball. He also does some special teams. I believe he does some kickoff returns. So if you have a return yards league, which the main league that I play in has that. So he is going to be a solid player there. That's definitely a guy that I am wanting on every single one of my PPR teams if I can get him. he provides the ability to possibly get into that running back one conversation. Last year, he finished as in my league as the running back number 11. And so yeah, he is definitely a guy that I am wanting to have on my team. The one last guy that I want to talk about real quick, with Le'Veon Bell missing camp, I know that the Pittsburgh Steelers have already said that they're going to give him a full load week 1. He hasn't even said, Bell hasn't even said that when he's gonna show up to camp or show up to the team because of the contract negotiations that they're dealing with. But we've talked about this, that Pittsburgh is going to basically use Le'Veon Bell until the wheels fall off, which is fine. They don't think they're going to be able to sign him. They don't want to have to deal with it. They're just going to use him as much as they can, not worrying about the future. If he doesn't show up because of these contract issues, I really believe that James Conner could have a big year. Or if Le'Veon Bell ends up going down because of injury from overuse, James Conner could be huge. He is a guy that I'm not going to handcuff if I've got Le'Veon Bell. I might. But if I don't have Le'Veon Bell, I very well may draft him at the end of the draft anyways, especially if we find out that Bell won't play week 1. If Bell's not going to play week 1, I want James Conner. Because James Conner has a good week, they may not care if Le'Veon Bell comes back. Or they might, but they will know what they have in James Conner. So James Conner's a guy, like I said, he's a guy that I'm keeping my eye on for this year. Not necessarily a plant my flag in like a Dion Lewis, but he is a guy that, because I believe so much in the usage that Le'Veon Bell is going to get this year, and again, if Le'Veon Bell stays healthy, he is absolutely going to be a monster this year. Because of that, if he does happen to get injured, James Conner should be used a lot as well. So that's all I've got for you guys tonight. I keep telling you that we've got some things coming up. We are not able to make the final announcements on those yet. Those are coming soon, I promise. We will be making announcements soon. So we have some great things coming down the pipe. I am really excited for this year. I really can't begin to thank all of our listeners for taking the time to listen to the information that we have provided, to want to know fantasy football more, and to be willing to trust us, honestly, with your time. It takes time to listen to these podcasts, to read our articles. So again, we want to thank you guys for taking the time to do that. So again, this has been the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullrud. We look forward to getting this season going. Next week, we are going to be talking about our busts. Some of our sleepers are busts, and we're going to have a big prediction show going into the season. So thank you again for listening. This has been the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast, and we'll talk to you guys later. Hey, SkullKing Nation. Thank you for listening to the SkullKing Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.